going back.
But then I squinted and realized what he could say.
So sorry, I didn't have my glasses. So I've been saying, this is Susie Whitelaw with Save Our Beaches San Clemente. I've been saying for the last year that the entire San Clemente State Beach was under threat of being armored by OCTA, but I didn't mean it as a suggestion. OCTA has now made this prediction come true. Next slide, please. This is what $8 million worth of riprap looks like, and that's a lot of money for a lot of riprap. Next slide. Imagine what 190 million tons of $1 million worth of riprap is going to look like. OCTA has just released their emergency plan to build an engineered revetment across the entire state beach from north of Calafia down to Cypress Shores. Next slide. The seawall could extend 50 to 100 feet seaward of the tracks and completely occupy whatever beach remains, because in many areas there's no dry sand left at all. Next slide, please. This is our beautiful state beach. We don't know exactly how far out the rock could extend, but it would devastate this gorgeous beach. Next slide. Not to be satisfied with that, at North Beach, they're proposing huge rock dumps starting on the south side all the way down to Linda Lane, about a half a mile. Next slide. What this means is, next slide. So that's all the way down to Linda Lane with the non-engineered revetment, just dumping rocks because North Beach doesn't deserve to engineer it. Next slide. What this means is the armoring of almost half of our public beaches. The only beaches unaffected would be the central beaches. Why? Because we're paying to put sand on them that will protect the tracks. Next slide. Why is this a problem? Because boulders kill beaches. These diagrams are beach width over the last few decades. Most of our beaches are like the top graph. There's a lot of seasonal variation, but a gradual narrowing due to lack of sand supply. However, on the bottom graph, once the beach narrows enough that storm waves crash against the rock, erosion accelerates, like on the bottom diagram, and then it disappears, like at the south end of town. And that's not what we want for our beautiful state beach. Next slide. OCTA is proposing no sand replenishment with this program, no responsibility to maintain the beach. We're asking that the city refuse to cooperate, no permits, no approvals, no easements, no rights of entry. We want OCTA to replenish the wide sandy beach before they put the rocks in and to maintain that beach for as long as the rocks remain. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ken Salter, followed by Joe Wilson, followed by Gary Walsh.
We're going to have a little bit more clarity on that issue a little bit later on. There are some updates in a presentation.
Okay, we look forward to that. I'm Ken Salter, and I just want to focus specifically on the section that covers the San Clemente State Beach. Octa is proposing to build an 18-foot tall, 50-foot wide at least, from what we can tell, 3/4 mile long fortress, if you will, the Great Wall of San Clemente. Can you go to the next slide? It runs along. Imagine the area between each of those parallel red lines filled in with the structure. It touches the wet sand such that there'll be no more wet sand. You can't stay at the beach all day because the tide's going to get you wet. No more picnics, no more 4th of July at Calafia Beach. That beach is gone. And speaking of the beach being gone, go to the next slide, please. This is sort of a view which shows you how far that rock wall would come down for a typical walk at low tide. But that sand that you see there below the red lines, that won't be there either because the rocks are going to penetrate so far into the active surf that that's going to scour the remaining sand away. And pretty much what you'll have after some relatively short amount of time is waves lapping up against this fortress. This is an abomination. This is an example of government gone awry. The fact that this is being pursued with an emergency permit, bypassing the environmental review process, no environmental impact report for a $200 million project that's on a state beach. I mean, come on, that's not the way things should be done. And it's an abuse of the emergency permit process. And this is where it leads. Can you go forward a few slides, please? Forward, please, forward. This is Cypress Shores, just going to thumb through these, shrinking through the years, and then collapsing over the past 3 or 4 years. And look at, and let's go to the next, one more slide. And this is what's left. This is 2008, this is 2021. You see in 2021, you see the retaining wall there, no beach. It's just gone. I mean, it's just a crime to contribute to this sort of thing. We're robbing our children, grandchildren. I can make all the, it's just self-evident that this is ridiculous, and we have to stop them. Next slide. So we ask you to stand with us firmly against Octa's proposal. State Beach is 100 times more crowded than Cypress ever was. So unlike the loss of Cypress Shores Beach, the loss of State Beach will not go unnoticed. Imagine the outcry when tens of thousands of people visit this summer and see that the beach is gone. They'll ask, what did you do to stop this? How could you let this happen? Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe Wilson, followed by Gary Walsh, followed by Ken Pochikai.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'd like to focus on one key proposal regarding our beaches, which I sent to all of you last week in the form of a potential content for a City Council resolution that I hope you can consider, please. It seems we all understand that OCTA must protect their tracks, but not at the expense of further eradicating our beaches. Initial and ongoing sand replenishment, sufficient to keep waves and high tides away from the OCTA revetment, provides the most effective and environmentally sustainable means of protecting the tracks. Currently, the OCTA Preliminary Emergency Plan does not contain any sand replenishment in its proposed remediation solutions on San Clemente beaches, only boulders, and that's not going to fly. So, and this is critical, our city must ensure that OCTA partner with required entities to replenish sand first, before more riprap can be added to their existing revetments. Why is that? Because there are too many risks that sand replenishment programs could be delayed or canceled once the tracks are protected with more riprap. While it's nice to think OCTA would do the right thing by following up with post-riprap sand replenishment, it's certainly better to ensure adequate sand is installed before the boulders drop. The City of San Clemente must pull out all the stops, please. No permits, approvals, easements, rights of way, or any other agreements unless we get sufficient initial sand replenishment and a commitment to ongoing replenishments as long as their boulders are there. Nevertheless, should OCTA's emergency riprap project somehow be approved prior to emergency sand being replenished, there are those of us who will be standing in front of those bulldozers day and night. Will you be with us? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Gary Walsh, followed by Ken Pochikai, followed by Amanda Q.
Okay. We've been warning you this day was coming ever since OCTA built their first wall 2 years ago from Cottons through Cypress Shore beaches. We warned you that the effects of dropping the riprap would creep northward. And now we are warning you that once they create this massive wall of boulders and the beaches in front of those boulders erode, it will creep northward until some years from now, they will be presenting another plan to you in front that the rocks, they need to drop rocks in the front of our beaches due to instability. At that point, the city beaches will be flanked by eroded beaches from both the north and south, and it's going to be too late. Now, recent studies by UCI have shown that the beach in front of the San Clemente State Parks is an excellent candidate for sand replenishment. Sand was OCTA's best armoring for the past 120 years. It's not sea level rise that's causing our erosion. We choked off the natural supply of sand by damming our rivers and creeks. The Army Corps of Engineers identified this 70 years ago and recommended that sand needed to be replenished. OCTA should have been busy replenishing sand for decades before this. The old adage, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, applies here. We've been begging OCTA to commence sand replenishment to protect our tracks for the past 2 years before it became an emergency. They promised us they would study it. All the while, the ocean was slowly eating the sand due to the riprap. Despite published studies and opinion of leading scientists stating that riprap exacerbates sand erosion, OCTA is on record that they don't believe it. That's like tobacco companies saying they don't believe cigarettes cause health problems. It's ludicrous. It is fitting to me and ironic that there's a RIP in riprap. RIP commonly means rest in peace and death, and the beaches that adjoin places where riprap is installed die. Now, come on, guys. Let's get on the right side of this. This is not manifest destiny. It's not inevitable. We can prevent this obscene proposal by bureaucrats 40 miles away. It wasn't that many years ago that another agency headquartered miles from our city, the Toll Roads Agency, proposed to extend the toll roads right down Pico Avenue as a necessity for travel. The City Council rightfully fought and won this battle. It is inconceivable to me that this City Council would dawdle over whether to oppose OCTA's plan to build a wall of rocks that will eliminate a neighboring beach. There's a line in the movie Shawshank Redemption. You need to either get busy living or get busy dying. And what are you going to do? Are we going to get busy watching our beaches die? Or are we going to get busy to make them live on for future generations? Well, we'll know tonight, I guess, right?
Thank you very much.
You, as the other folks spoke, we have a sand emergency, not a rail emergency. We need to start turning the talk around on that. It's all about the railroad, the railroad, the railroad. We have a sand problem. It's all about the beach, and we fix the beach sand problem, and we fix the railroad problem. Octa wants to throw $200 million of riprap and other things on our beaches. Right now at North Beach, we have water coming up to the bushes, which are west of the tracks. So that'll all be riprap soon. All the bushes will be gone. You can picture it. And then the beach will erode as Susie showed in that picture. We're begging you today to please instruct our city engineers, no permits for that type of activity. Please ask them to work with Octa to spend, I don't know, what is it? We had a budget meeting earlier. It was $10 million or something for parts of keeping our sand along with other inputs. But if we could spend $50 million, we'd have sand everywhere. We'd have the most awesome beaches around, and we'd have safe railroad tracks. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to me. After that, once we get that done, we need to complete that sustainability study. You know, we all know that there's ways to keep our sand on our beaches through some kind of reefs or groins or other things that people smarter than me understand. But I hope that we can push on that as well, and really appreciate all your support and hard work on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda Q. The next card is blank, so if you're an anonymous speaker, come on up after Amanda.
So it was an honor in being in the leader.
Hi, Chris Butler, President of North Beach Community Association. First, let me say this has been one of the most productive city councils we've had, and I appreciate all the work that y'all have done together to act professionally and not be partisan on things. I feel like you've gotten a lot done, and we've seen in our community with the safety and progress, and I know there's a lot of hard issues at hand, but a lot of us stand behind you. That being said, obviously there's a lot of emotion about what's going on with the beaches right now with the riprap. I will say I stand behind what's been said already. We know not only the riprap damage the beach, but it accelerates the erosion of the beaches as well, right? And we already have some lawsuits with some of our neighborhood associations that are fighting OCTA on what they've already done when they dumped rocks and what it did to their communities. But it leads to a bigger question, and a question of how we can solve it, especially with who are our state leaders that are supposedly acting on our behalf to protect our lifeblood, which is our beaches and a beach community, and how do we get them to the table, or who do we need to get in there to act on our behalf? But my big question is why aren't we discussing the viability of the railroad as a whole? I understand, you know, in previous conversations, the cost of relocating it, but the reality is, just like we've told beach towns that try to keep parking lots on the beach, at some point that land erodes, and we're trying to prolong the inevitable with the railroads in some ways. So their solutions are to implement temporary destructive efforts, only to probably in 15 years or 10 years have to really relook at, can that railroad exist there anyways? And I think that question needs to be asked directly to the engineers is, are you just prolonging the inevitable while destroying our community? And if that's the case, then we need to be honest and try new things and maybe relocate the railroad and start looking at those efforts. And in the short term, put sand on the beaches. That's the number one thing we need to do, is put sand on our beaches, and we need to fight the rocks at all costs. And we need to figure out how to do that. And if we need to get legal teams and more people in place, tell the community what you need. We'll stand up with you.
Thank you.
Good evening, City Council members. I'm happy to see you here today with smiles on your face, and it was a good presentation, by the way, for Ms. Zapadaka. That was wonderful. I'm standing up here because I lived in the Riviera District for about 30 years, saw the beaches come and go. Mostly we had nice wide beaches. I received some photos just 3 days ago with the beach covered with rocks from one side to the other. I've never seen that in the 30 years I lived at Rivy. And 3 days later, I got a phone call from the person who sent me the photographs and said, the rocks are gone. Now, we need to ask ourselves, I mean, this is the magnitude of what's happening with the railroad. And I want to interject here. We had a presentation from the railroad first study that was done 3 years ago, I think it was in 2020 that we did this at the Coastal Advisory Committee. I'm speaking to you right now as a member of the community. But the gentleman who was in charge of that project said the railroads know it's inevitable that they have to move. Think about that. That was 4 years ago. And why are we waiting for them to take our beaches? We know as a city, everyone who lives here did not come here to watch the trains go by. They came here because they loved the nature, the treasure of the ocean and our beaches. People come from all over the world here to see this. And we're not fighting for them. I agree with the person who suggested that we get the legislators involved, because the legislators are reporting to their constituents and they want to make everybody happy. These are the years of politics where many of them can go down, and they know that. So please, if you have to hire consultants, political consultants to help you figure out how to deal with the legislators, of course I know you do, and I know we have lobbyists in places, but this is critical to our whole community. So I ask you to really think about it. You've seen pictures from Susie for over a year now, and when we're walking, even when I took Andy Hall here, when he came and showed him part of state beaches, and we got down to the pier as well. And Andy, I think you just went, wow, I didn't realize that this was happening here. And it's just so critical. So please, if there's anything that we can do as a community, we're going to be there for you to help get the word out, to help you do this fight. Thank you.